Hi, I'm Hannah Wallace and welcome to FinextraTV. With me now to speak about the upcoming SustainableFinance.Live event that will be focusing on supply chain traceability is, of course, Richard Pears from Responsible Risk. Richard, how are you?
I'm very well. Good to see you in person.
It's really good to see you. And I'm really looking forward to speaking about the fast approaching SustainableFinance.Live, which I believe is the fifth in a series of what can only be described as pioneering events. It's been amazing to watch the community grow, and this event will be no different because it comes at a pretty special time, just after COP26, which I believe you attended yourself.
I did, yeah, the first one that I've had the chance to go up to, and it was pretty interesting. Yeah, it was a mixture of the commercial, the public sector, obviously what was happening on the streets. So yeah, very interesting.
So perhaps we can hear about some of your takeaways from COP26 before we delve into the detail around SustainableFinance.Live, and also what do you think it meant for the sustainable fintech community?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I asked a lot of people, the same question really, and many of them said for the first 20 or so, we're just trying to convince people there was a problem with climate change. So the focus on this one, although the public sort of headlines through the press was that it was a disappointment, what a lot of people felt was that the agreements that have been made in Paris, a lot of ratification and detail of that, particularly around carbon pricing, etc., had been put into place through this COP. The finance had shifted from that sort of 100 billion that everyone was talking about as being disappointing that it wasn't being allocated, but then the 100+ trillion that was being committed to by GFANZ, which was the private finance, was seen as being obviously just a completely different ballpark. And in a sense, the blue zone is where the government is, the green zone is where the commercial sector is, and it was the feeling was that energy and action was coming from the green zone. So when you talk to what does that mean to a sustainable fintech community? They will have now the policy, the regulation, the pressure and the need coming from not only the finance community, but also with Rishi Sunak's announcements on corporate disclosures for the UK, you're going to have the corporate desire coming through, which is strong anyway. So you've got all of this nexus of forces, which means that if you're building solutions, you're going to have a very good field in which to play. Sure.
Well, there are mixed reviews. Do you think as a whole it was a success though?
Yeah, very much so. You always want to think, that we can solve it overnight, but it's just a massive geopolitical problem. So as I say, the ratifications and the progress, the shift to the private sector, enabling all that money, also, focus on the greenwashing, these sort of things, which we've spoken about many times. So there was some real substance on that.
Well, exactly. Let's come back to the event then, because that's what we've touched on in the past. How does this COP26 lead us into the next event, do you think?
Well, the key thing is we've always said, if you focus just on corporate disclosures, which is only by a limited number of companies, then the data, which informs all of the decisions really and impacts the impact investments in the world, has got some questions over it. And there's a lot of commentary being written about green washing. So we've done a lot of this. We've done the satellites, the sensors, the nature, the risk. We've covered all these areas. But what everybody kept saying is the hardest problem to solve is supply chain. On carbon, that's the scope 1, 2, 3 area, and that's obviously the primary focus of the COP. But also the nature related transportation of goods and services, nature related through supply chains from forests through to shops and recycling. But also social, the social impact that happens across those supply chains. So we went, okay, let's have a look at it. Let's see what the problems are and try and tackle it.
All right, so for those that aren't as familiar as others, take us through the theme of the event, supply chain traceability, better data, lower risk. Talk about it.
So as I was just touching on there, if you take just one example, forestry, which again, coming out of the COP, there were huge announcements about stopping deforestation and creating more reforestation, rewilding. So what does that mean? In an emerging economy, they make a lot of money from deforestation, and we all know these headlines. I won't go into it, but if you try and say, okay, what is the the value of that tree species in situ, where it stands, both as a place of capturing carbon and also the biodiversity that lives around it. We all know, we've watched enough David Attenboroughs to know that's valuable. But how do you track and trace the wood coming out of that forest and as it moves through a factory, into a piece of furniture, into retail, into your home, and then ultimately being recycled? What is the kind of carbon life cycle of that, and how can you measure and manage that? How can you put a price on it, and therefore try and respect that you only take the appropriate recyclable wood that's fast growth perhaps rather than old growth wood, just to keep it quite simple. So we're trying to look down all of these supply chains, and that's just one to illustrate the point, and trying to figure out what are the mechanisms that you could use in terms of transactional mechanisms, be it a carbon certificate, be it a biodiversity certificate, may it be just a payment transaction that you can follow so that you can see that you're not double counting and cheating the system, if you will. So that's what we're going to focus in on, and obviously with a lot of detail as well.
Okay, and from that, can you tell us about some of the case studies we'll be visiting during the event?
Yeah, so as always, we want to look at the three perspectives, the investor perspective, the investee perspective, and then, if you like, the solution provider perspective, so that we get sort of nice lenses on the problem. So we've invited in Microsoft. They clearly have made big announcements that they are carbon neutral, they will be net zero by 2030, and they're going to clear all the carbon they've ever created since the company was founded. They made those announcements a few years ago, and they don't make those announcements unless they've already got a good plan in place. They clearly have got a lot of technology and services already to hand, which many people don't. So companies like that need to be able to say, this is what we've learned so far. We haven't fixed it. We're not trying to be pious, but we're trying to help share what we've learned. So we're going to get that from Microsoft. We're also going to one of the hardest problems. We always like to get somebody in the farthest reaches of complexity and say, if you fixed it, then surely we can. And we started with our Ocean Mind example. This time we're going to waste, solid waste, which is not tracked, it's not traced, it's not barcoded, it's not nice and neat. It's very messy. And we've got a great company called Topolytics who are going to talk about how they're using data, machine learning, artificial intelligence and other mechanisms to get solid waste back into the supply chain for reuse. So I think that'll be fascinating. And then, of course, the investor perspective. So we're going to an asset manager, ODDO, and there we're going to talk about their needs. What is their fiduciary responsibility? What is their investment goals? And what are they doing to actually analyse not only the environmental side, but very much the social side. So Martina is going to talk about the social dimension.
But when you first meet those case studies, they can sound incredibly complicated, but you do a great job at breaking them down. But so tell us a bit more about the format then of the event, because it is quite unique. What can the audience take away from it this year?
Yeah, well, I think we're following the same recipe, and it's interesting to see, more people adopting it, which is that people get the issues largely, but what they want to do is get away from the sort of the what and the why, but how do I fix this? So what we try and do is we start to baseline. Okay, we all need to know where we're coming from. So that's what we do with what we call the lean back sessions. Literally sit back in your chair, listen to 3 great case studies, pretty short, so we don't bore you, death by PowerPoint, but you'll get the baseline. Then we get to the lean in. Hopefully you're now starting to lean forward in your chair, you want to know more, and that's a bit more of a Q&A panel session, if you will. But that really, all that's doing is setting you up for the workshops, which is the learn by doing. And learn by doing is because this is where we really bring in the audience, as well as obviously expert practitioners. We take, as I said, the investor lens, and we give them the pen basically to say, sorry, everything in my world is what's dominant, so therefore let's talk to me and my problems. But everybody else, be it the investor, the investee, the solution provider, contributes, so we get a multidisciplinary view. And we're whiteboarding, we're putting it up on the board. We're saying this is a problem, park it, can't fix it. This is a challenge, this is a solution. Didn't know about that one. So we go through all of this, and the audience can pile in and go, I've got a better idea, folks, you're totally missing this. And we might pick that up, sometimes we park it. But all of this gets wrapped up in a really nice visual record, so the audience can hopefully go away and sort of go, I didn't just watch something and learn it, I've got a takeaway that I can really take back to my business or societal business and get going.
So taking all of that into account then, I want to end by looking back on the last 2 years of these incredible SustainableFinance.Live events. Can you tell us what has been the impact and what have we taken away?
Well, I was hoping that what we'd do is we would educate people and that we'd act as a catalyst. And, I certainly think we've done the first bit, but, education is nothing without action. So let's just take a few examples. Ernst Young, Microsoft and Earth Knowledge have put together a partnership whereby they created a thought-leading, really quite breakthrough white paper on the impact of biodiversity in the financial markets. That was something that came about as these guys coming together through these forums. They wouldn't have met each other probably otherwise. Clearly Ernst Young and Microsoft would have met each other, but Earth Knowledge is new. And that's gone on as something that's been shared through the EY network in particular, through quite a lot of regions of the world. So quite a big reach there. Elasticloud, the team of guys that always do the great whiteboarding sessions for us with Richard Conway and Darshna, they are a consulting business, and they've decided to build a product around ESG so that you can help with the scoring and the risk calculations. We've also got the formation of the TNFD, the Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosure. And, we've taken the visual records and we've given that into that forum as a resource that people can use. Now, all of these things, I don't know whether they'll make a change, but, this isn't just a marketing event. This is a convening of great ideas, I think, which others can learn from.
Yeah, as I said before, an incredible community that we've grown in this space. And Richard, can't wait for the next one. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.